Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. So guys, welcome back to part 2 of our Driver Rivalry series between Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. If you haven't checked out part 1 already, make sure to go and check that out, and that's where we compare the records that they have and who's going to kind of, how many records Lewis Hamilton will be able to beat in there. But today we do our classic kind of head-to-head. We're going to look at the stats before looking at some key things within a race and comparing the two before giving our concluding thoughts of who's better, Michael Schumacher or Lewis Hamilton. So guys, let's get in with it, and the only place we start off first with is the stats. So me and Ashley are going to take a step to our left. And then up there, we're going to start off with Lewis Hamilton's stats. So Ash, you start off with Lewis Hamilton.
So, Lewis Hamilton has got 5 World Championships. He has got 82 race wins. He's got 146 podiums. He has got 87 pole positions. That was the next one on the list. And he has currently got 35 fastest laps.
And for me, I am looking at Schumacher. There we go. Starting off with Schumacher's stats, and he has 7 World Championships. He has 92 race wins, 155 podiums, 68 pole positions, and he has 77 fastest laps. So there's a look at the stats, guys, and I think you can say that it is pretty close head-to-head, because obviously Hamilton is still a competing driver, and some of those, like we discussed yesterday, he does have a real chance of beating. But for now, guys, we're now going to go into comparing certain driver elements against each other.
Now, the one thing we can say from this is we were having a discussion, and our usual format is to say pros and cons of the drivers. Both of us actually struggled to come up with substantive cons for why we would say Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher are not a good driver in certain aspects. And it was more, we were finding faults for finding fault's sake and then trying to expand an argument from that. So we've decided to structure it a little bit different, and that's the reason why we're going to pick out certain elements across a race weekend and just compare the two on that aspect. So we're going to start off by looking at the actual racecraft of the two drivers, and that's something where I feel it's a good comparison that we can get between them. I believe that Lewis Hamilton is the better driver when it comes to the wheel-to-wheel combat. Iron up a move, and when you look at some of them, he's planned them a couple of laps in advance, or you can see the fact that he knows that opportunity is going to come about. Schumacher, on the other hand, whilst he did have that good racecraft, I feel there was quite a few tangles that could have been avoided, and it is something we'll discuss later in the video, but it was that ruthlessness that he had that sometimes was his detriment in a race.
And I'm going to say Schumacher for me on a Sunday edges it. He just, considering the time that he was racing, it is so difficult to compare people from different eras, but we're trying. But yes, he pushed beyond the edge, and I believe the only tangles Schumacher really got into were at times the deliberate ones, where he was going for his championship wins. His actual wheel-to-wheel racing and his racecraft for me includes his kind of natural pace in there as well. That wheel-to-wheel action, I thought he was a fantastic overtaker, and he always needed what he needed to do, and he got past the driver and he made sure he secured the wins that got him that championship title when he was at Benetton and also when he was at Ferrari. And then the second comparison that we are going to make between the two is driver style / kind of personality. And for me, Michael Schumacher was the ruthless, relentlessly quick driver. He was the one who was like the first real F1 driver, I would say, of the modern era that just brought, you could argue Prost or Lauda, but he brought such a professionalism, and he was an athlete as well. He was in fantastic shape, and just his pace in races in terms of the gaps that he could build up at the top. And obviously you can see that in the stats where he had 77 fastest laps. He knew what the job was and he was ruthless. You gave Michael Schumacher a sniff and he would take it. He would not let up from his opponents at all.
And I would say that Lewis Hamilton is the other side of the coin when you look at race styles. And he is a very methodic driver, and it is very Lauda-esque when you watch him nowadays. And I think it is something that came into his driving style because of that relationship that he had with Niki Lauda. So if Lewis Hamilton gets in a position where he is able to control the race, it will be controlled to the pace he wants it to be at. If he's needing to manage his tyres, the pace will slow down and everyone has to fall and follow that. If he's wanting to, i.e. Hungary, put in consistent qualifying laps, he will do that. And it's more, he does what he needs to win and doesn't go beyond that. He will stick to what he needs to be doing. And it's another style that has got results, as can be seen by the number of race wins he's got, podiums he's achieved.
I think on this one, where obviously we both differed in terms of I was Schumacher on racecraft, you were Lewis on racecraft, I think this one is, they have differing driving styles, but they are both ones that they have made work for them. So they are bang even on this one.
They picked their driving style, it worked for them and got them the results. You can't turn around and say you're wrong for driving like that, especially when the numbers don't support that. So a definite one where I would say a tie. You can't split them on that.
And then what does it move on to our next comparison, Ash?
It moves us on to Saturday performances, so qualifying results and who has the edge. The stats don't lie on this one, and I think it's quite obvious that Lewis Hamilton wins this one. On a Saturday, he always has that pace to be in and around the front of the grid, has the record for the most number of pole positions, and one thing that I would always say, and it's discussions I've had with people for quite a while, if there is rain on a Saturday, Lewis Hamilton is the one where you can pretty much almost guarantee a pole position for him. His outright single lap pace is up there with the best, I would say.
And I completely agree. I think Schumacher, still in his own right, was an absolutely fantastic qualifier, but where his relentless pace came in that I spoke about earlier in the video, it was more on a Sunday where that kind of came into its element and in its own. On a Saturday, yes, he was very regular still at getting pole positions, but I would say if he didn't get pole position, his in racecraft to kind of work his way through a field, he was more happy to work his way, do that. And during his era, there was a lot more reliability issues and more grid penalties and stuff like that.
And more overtaking.
Exactly, and more overtaking. So it just meant that, yeah, the pole position wasn't as important, I would say, as what it is nowadays.
And I would agree, especially with the fact that the main thing in Formula 1 now is the lack of overtaking and not being able to follow close enough behind a driver, which Schumacher in that aspect has the advantage of the cars were more able to. But I would lean on Hamilton saying if you wanted to back someone to get pole position, I'd say him on that. Which leads us on to
Sunday performance, race day, and the one that, you know, counts in the driver championship and is at the end of the day, you can be the best driver in qualifying, but if you can't deliver on the Sunday, then you're not going to be remembered in the world of Formula 1. And these two are both fantastic Sunday drivers, but for me, Schumacher just edges it. I think it's questionable in terms of some of the ways that he went, but I think if you came down to it, if they were racing side by side in their prime in a magic world that we could imagine this is, I think Schumacher would just questionably, admittedly, would just push it a little bit further that might edge him over Hamilton. Because Hamilton, for me, when I always think about it and talk about the top drivers, he's one of the only ones from memory that I can think of. I can't really think of any questionable incidents that Hamilton has done within a race. he's always been on the line. You can think about Sebastian Vettel has done questionable things, but Lewis Hamilton has been very by the line, very honest and very true performer.
I'll put one out there for you. Him overtaking Felipe Massa in Singapore, 2010, I believe it was, wasn't it?
Yes, that is certainly one.
I believe it was 2010. It was definitely Singapore.
Yeah, it was definitely Hamilton on Massa. That is one, but
I'll put it out there.
Schumacher has a fair few more controversial ones, and obviously they have both been involved in their teams with team orders benefiting them in a race win, but none worse than probably that Rubens Barrichello, Michael Schumacher on the final straight. Yeah, that was one of the worst moments probably in F1, and Michael Schumacher probably is one of the most embarrassing moments. But I think race on a Sunday, Schumacher for me just edges it. I think he goes beyond that limit, sometimes too far, but it does get him the performance that secures him the wins.
For Sunday performance, I'm actually going to say this one is a tie. Now, yes, Schumacher has more race wins, but as you were seeing in the video yesterday, I believe Hamilton is going to beat that. Yes, Schumacher has got more fastest laps in a race scenario. The one thing I would put into that is, one, tyres were more durable back then, and also refuelling. I'm going to put it out there as an argument. Nowadays, because of not having that refuelling aspect, there's not that opportunity to go for a fastest lap always on lighter fuel because of the tyre wear side of things. Schumacher was fantastic in his Sunday performances, and I'd say the one thing that stands out for me was that ability to have a poor Saturday and make up the places. But I just think Hamilton, with that consistency side of things and not having those tangles, I think is the best way the way we've decided to use for it with other drivers.
Friendly interactions on track.
Yeah, love kisses. Love tap.
Oh dear. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe. I would just go for it being a tie because it's a hard one to compare because of the eras of F1. It's not as if it's a single step of rule changes. Since the end of Schumacher's main F1 career, there's been 3 rule changes.
Yeah.
So it is that there's quite a big step, I'd say there, and it's a hard one to compare. I'm going to say a tie on that.
Fair enough in terms of that. And then what does that move us on to our last comparison point?
It moves us on to team dynamics. Now, I think the best way to put it is both of these drivers have rubbed their teammates the wrong way.
Yeah.
Have had disagreements with certain teammates, and they've also had teammates that have been quite compliant. So Hamilton, obviously, very controversial team relationship with both Fernando Alonso and Nico Rosberg, and I'd also go along the lines of saying that in terms of the competitive nature, Jenson Button would go on to that one. But he's had compliant teammates as well. Now, Heikki Kovalainen was never really a challenge of a teammate to beat.
No.
And Bottas, yes, challenges for race wins, but I don't think he's got the mental side of a season-long battle.
He is in Lewis's back pocket.
Yes,
that is for sure.
If Lewis Hamilton would like something, Valtteri Bottas would probably do it. It is so the team dynamics there are, without it being perceived to be, I think there are clear number one drivers there.
Yeah.
The only time where that was ever challenged was Fernando Alonso, where not great the way that ended. Jenson Button, I would say, was probably the only season where you could look at it and say, actually, evens. And then Nico Rosberg, yes, he was number one driver in the team, but there was a lot of support for Nico Rosberg within the team.
German driver in a German team.
Exactly. So, yeah.
For me, Hamilton has learnt to do it, but Schumacher learned far earlier in his career how to rule the roost, and it will be one of my concluding points, especially how he ruled the roost in that Ferrari team. and finding a teammate like Rubens Barrichello with the talent of a driver like Rubens Barrichello, basically him and Bottas are very similar. Yeah, both incredibly likeable chaps, both incredible guys able to win and compete for race wins, but when push came to shove, they knew that they were stuck under the thumb of their superior teammate, and they were there to make sure that Ferrari or Mercedes secure the constructors and not for them to pursue a driver's championship.
It was more, if number one driver asks you to jump, they would say how high.
Exactly. And that probably leads us on nicely to going into concluding thoughts. And so, do you want me to start off, or do you want you to go first?
You can go first on this one.
So for me, if you haven't guessed already how these arguments are favouring, or by the tops that we're wearing, for me, Michael Schumacher is better. I think, obviously, we got the tail end of Schumacher's career, but have been avid fans of Formula One throughout Hamilton's entire career, and there's just an immense respect for both drivers. Like, they are huge talents and some of the best drivers who have ever graced Formula One, and it has been magnificent to watch them, and just even watching highlights of old Hamilton races, old Schumacher races are great to watch. For me, Michael Schumacher edges it just for one reason that defines it for me. Lewis Hamilton is the cog in a machine at Mercedes that is orchestrated there, but he's the missing part. He's the fantastic talent and goes and completes that team. Michael Schumacher took a Ferrari, the name of Ferrari, the biggest name in Formula One, who hadn't won a world championship since 1979. He moulded that team, he crafted it in his image and made them the relentless and fearsome force that they were in the early 2000s. And just his ability to do that, and his ability to take Ferrari from where they were to where they were at the end of his time where he left Ferrari, was absolutely incredible. And Lewis has done that with Mercedes, but he hasn't dragged it. Mercedes were already on that trajectory, and Lewis was just a talent. I think, you could arguably say if Fernando Alonso was the one that went into Mercedes at that time, we might be sitting here talking about him with all these world championships. Lewis was very clever about the team that he went into, and it has certainly paid off for him.
And as Mike said, I'm sure you can figure out where I'm leaning on this. I think Lewis Hamilton is one of those where, because he's not necessarily got that popularity outside of Formula One, you're not going to appreciate what an amazing driver he is until he's not on the grid anymore. And you're then going to start to notice what's missing in F1. It is that character that within the dynamic of the grid is automatically got that draw to them. I'd say the one thing he has over Schumacher is, when you look at him in terms of his teammates, he came into that and automatically made them comply with him. So he stepped up into the McLaren Mercedes as a rookie driver, and within the first 4 or 5 races of that season, you're looking, well, Fernando Alonso's got a challenge on from a rookie driver here, and that's a double world champion there.
Exactly.
Jenson Button came in, Heikki Kovalainen came into the team, and it was straight away, well, you're not on my level, so you comply with what I want you to do. Jenson Button gave him a challenge, but in all honesty, team dynamic was towards Hamilton. He made the change to Mercedes, and Nico Rosberg, yes, Rosberg had that one season where he got the championship, but other than that, Hamilton was that number one driver, and it is that relentless, having that mental ability to come back onto a season, straight away win it. I would also say the one thing that goes for Hamilton is he sometimes can be a slow starter in the season. This year has definitely been an anomaly in that case.
This has been his best start to a season ever.
Exactly. But he will do it, and even if he is having that slow start, not necessarily dropping away from being near the front of the grid and then just steamrolls in the second half. This season has been that flip. And then when you look at the title challenges he's had, drivers that Like Sebastian Vettel, 4-time world champion, couldn't keep up with the relentless pressure of Hamilton last season, and this season, yes, the Ferrari car has not had that performance, but Vettel hasn't really looked like challenging Hamilton, even when they have been close on track. The only time I would say Hamilton has had any concerns about Vettel in terms of race performance this year was Canada. Other than that,
I would say Singapore as well. I would say Vettel was supreme in Singapore. That was one of Vettel's classic performances.
He was fast, but I would say that Hamilton was also in a position where Mercedes messed up on that one.
Oh, they did, but I don't think Lewis would have beaten Vettel on that day. I think he would have just said, hands up, Vettel's better. But the overall thing is saying Hamilton's had an absolutely fantastic season.
Yeah, and it is that fact that he has that mental ability to switch on, and I'm going to be one of the ones that's going to put an unpopular opinion out there. One of the things people say against Hamilton is the fact that he has so many things going on outside of F1, but if he's using that to relax, I'm going to look at last season's British Grand Prix. Week before, didn't really do much of the media side of things, came into practice, switched on, pole position, and yeah, race wasn't the greatest, but that was because it was spun. Kimi got him. But when you're getting a result like that, he's using time away from Formula 1 to improve his results, and I think for him it's what he needs, and a successful Hamilton is something we need in F1, because once he's gone, I don't see a character. Yes, I can see some fantastic world champions, but I don't see that character in F1 at the moment.
And guys, that is it. That is our thoughts on the Michael Schumacher versus Lewis Hamilton, or Michael Schumacher versus
Lewis Hamilton.
And guys, as always on this, we are a fan channel. It's all our opinions. We have great kind of discussions between me and Ash going, who is actually better in terms of that? Sometimes we agree, sometimes we have a day like today where we disagree. But guys, we would love to hear your comments and thoughts on it below. Let us know what you thought as comparisons between them. It is so hard comparing from different eras, but they are two of the greatest drivers of all time. And
I'd argue saying the top two.
Exactly. Yes. I think, in my opinion, they are the top two.
Yeah. I'd say probably...
It might be one for another day in terms of that.
I think maybe Senna gets close to them.
Senna's the one who comes closest from there. Yeah. But guys, yeah, we had a great fun enjoying it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Ash, what can they do?
You can press the subscribe button so you get our videos going into your YouTube inbox, and also press the bell icon so you get a notification when one of our videos goes live, and you'll be able to see who is the next F1 Rivals, where we will discuss who is better.
And guys, I hope you've enjoyed that video as much as we've enjoyed making this video. Thanks for your support as always, and you F1 fans, keep racing.